Jane, it's great to meet you, and what a pleasure it is to have you here to have a little chat about some of your programs and the Roots and Shoots. So thank you for being here.
Well, Kevin, it's great for me to meet and be talking with you because you've helped us so much. Toyota has helped us, not only here in Canada, but also in Tanzania quite some time ago. So it's lovely to have this chance to thank you in person.
Educating young people in environmental sustainability is near and dear to my heart, and it's also a part of Toyota's long-term strategy. So for viewers who are not familiar with your program, Roots and Shoots, can you give us just a little bit of background about that?
It was back in 1991, and I kept meeting, as I was traveling around the world, young people who lost hope, even back then. And they said, well, you compromised our future and there's nothing we can do about it. Yes, we have compromised their future. We've been stealing it probably since the Industrial Revolution. Is there nothing they can do? No, you're wrong there. So Roots and Shoots is a program that began in Tanzania with 12 high school students. We decided the main message, every individual matters and makes a difference every single day. And each group will choose 3 projects, because everything's interrelated. A project for people, for animals, for the environment. So from that little beginning, 12 high school students from 8 schools gathering in their friends. We're now in 65 countries with hundreds of thousands of members, and the alumni who've been through the program and are now in decision-making positions. And they retain the values that they acquired in Roots and Shoots. The main one, respect. Respect for people, animals, and the environment. It's my greatest reason for hope. Because there's so much, nations, peoples are divided, there's hatred in the world. And Roots and Shoots, because we try and bring young people together from different parts of the world, different religions and cultures, they sort of learn without being taught or told or preached to that it's the color of your skin, your nationality, your language, your culture, your religion is much less important than the fact we're all human beings. We all laugh, we all cry, we all bleed if we're hurt.
One of the things we've discovered as we engage with young students is that when we extend the classroom into nature, it's a whole new level of understanding and learning of what happens. So do you see this outcome during Roots and Shoots?
One of the tragedies of today's world is people's disconnect from nature. And not only are we actually part of the natural world, but we depend on it for food, for water, for clean air, for everything. But what we depend on is healthy ecosystems. And I see that as like a great tapestry. And as species become extinct, which is happening more and more, 6th great extinction, it's like a thread is pulled from the tapestry until it hangs in tatters and the ecosystem collapses. So getting children, particularly young children, out into nature, away from iPhones and things like that, away from social media, they are curious. They want to know, how does this worm move? As I asked, where does the egg come out of the chicken? Some children love finding out about things in the grass and the different insects. And if your curiosity is answered, you want to learn more, and then you learn to love nature, and then you grow up to want to protect it. And that's essential because we're running out of time.
One of my biggest concerns is also water. If I had to put it in a priority, water is a huge impact. If we can't have water, then we're not going to survive.
Well, that's right. And a lot of our water comes from the ocean, which we are polluting. The 2 great lungs of the world, the forests and the oceans, others as well, and we're destroying the forest, polluting the ocean. We've got to make change.
One of the things that I really am promoting within Toyota is that biodiversity experience. For our team members, sometimes we have a lot of land on some of our areas, so we build trails and we put in, leave the natural flora, fauna, but we also try to explain that to our team members so they can get out and walk and learn and get that touch feel, even though it's right here. And then we also bring in students, who can come in and learn from that as well and take part of, studying it and trying to learn and be educated from that.
And it's a very important way to have people walk. If you're going around in a car and you notice that when the car stops, suddenly you get out, you're there in nature and you hear the sounds. You miss so much in a car.
Yes. At Toyota, we see that students understand concepts like climate change, water scarcity, recycling, and the importance of native plants and animals. Biodiversity is a very complex issue. And how do you communicate those complexities to younger students?
Well, I think that, first of all, I wish that learning about climate change, biodiversity, and our dependence on the natural world, that should be part of the curriculum adjusted for age in every school all around the world. Because if you grow up thinking in these terms, then that will be with you for the rest of your life. But of course, we're not there, but we're working towards that goal. I'm amazed actually at how young people, once you've explained things to them, they get it. They get it much quicker than older people. And they just understand, well, of course, we need all these different animals, and plants, they all play a role. And a little tiny insect may become extinct, so what? But maybe another bird was dependent on that insect for its main food. So that bird is now going to become extinct. And then maybe there's some other creature that depended on the bird for something or other. And so this can lead to ecosystem collapse because all of these different plants and animals have a role to play, and they make up this beautiful tapestry of life that I mentioned earlier. And I learned about that in the rainforest at Gombe, the best days of my life when I was out there with the chimpanzees. And that knowledge that I gained from the forest, and I feel a very strong spiritual connection with the forest and nature. And that experience has really been behind everything I've been doing to help the young people get a better appreciation for their role in this and what they can do.
I'm excited that, as part of what you're doing and what others are doing and what Toyota's doing, trying to educate. To me, that education is so critical for people to understand, and getting that hands-on experience is extremely valuable. And I'm really glad that we're working together on Roots and Shoots.
People must change from within for real change to happen. And that's what we can do with young people. Get them on the right trail through the natural world as early as possible.
These students are the leaders of tomorrow, and some of them actually could be Toyota team members, we hope. How important is it to educate students early about these issues?
The earlier the better, because then you get the young mind thinking in the kind of ways they need to think if we're going to change the catastrophic direction we're headed in now. And there are scientists who say we have only so many more years left and we're going to reach the point of no return. Some scientists say we've reached it. I say we have a window of time, but I don't know how big that window is. We have the answers to the problems we've created. We lack the will. There aren't enough people who are willing to make sacrifice. But I think the young people who've been through these programs, who understand nature, they become passionate defenders of nature.
And I agree. I liked your idea earlier of every classroom, every age group should have some type of education about what these issues are. And I'm really excited that maybe we can move in that direction. I think it takes corporations like Toyota and others to also push in that direction. We at Toyota, we realize there's climate change and we know we're part of the problem. right? So we have to understand that, and we have to be able to make that change and the sacrifice, but we also have to be leaders and show that to others. And that's what I really think is the biggest job that we have. And working with people such as you and Roots and Shoots can really, I think, make a change. I'm really excited about what that possibility might look like in the near term.
Yes, I think it's definitely clear that business, corporations have to take the lead in this crisis time, because governments are just, they're handcuffed in a way, and they've just got to do what their constituents want. Some of them are definitely under the thumb of businesses such as the arms industry, petrochemical industry, agribusiness. It's very tough. I know people who've been into politics with absolutely the right ideas, but then if they start following those through, they get pushed aside. We have to follow every avenue. We've got to do it together. We've got to cooperate and collaborate all around the world and defeat corruption.
Where do you think that some of the key areas are that we need to collaborate with, such as corporations and you, obviously, in Roots and Shoots, but where are some of those other key people that we need to reach out to?
There's a tendency for NGOs who are environmentalists or something like that to preach to the converted. So it's really important to find those companies who have a CEO or somebody with your position that really do care. And then even if they're still doing a bit of pollution, which I'm sure your company is, but trying to move in a different direction, listening to people who have solutions to some of the impact that you're making that's negative. And then it's a win-win-win situation, because we as an NGO can benefit from donations from a corporation like that, like Toyota. And the environment will win, and the company will win. So it's win-win-win. And, if we can't do more of this around the world, we're probably doomed. It's that urgent. I keep trying to say, that's why at 88 I'm still reaching out all around the world and telling people, we've got to take action. And collaboration is so important. There are people working on every single problem that exists, but so often they're working in silos. And if you work and solve one problem without realizing this could impact another and create a new problem over there, then your work is useless.
The point you just made, which was, I can't agree more with, is those companies that refuse to work together and collaborate because they believe that it's all about still that net profit. We've got to kind of break those walls down, especially when we start talking about water conservation. It doesn't matter. In the profit world, we all have to conserve water. We've got to conserve the biodiversity that's around us. It's got nothing to do with business. I think it just makes more sustainability, and it makes you a stronger company. So that's the kind of collaboration I'm really pushing for in trying to work with other companies and learn, as you said, and learn from you to what we can do. That's the type of collaboration I think that will bring some sense of urgency, and I'm really excited about that chance.
As you say, water and air and food, we need all three. And we're polluting the water, we're polluting the air, and we're reducing the biodiversity of life on the planet. So we've got to collaborate more and more and more. So Kevin, talking with you, I've just been reminded of one of my favorite beings on the planet. He's no longer with us, but he made a huge impact on me. And that was David Graybeard, the chimpanzee, the first one who let me come near him, the first one to show me chimpanzees can use objects as tools at a time when science believed humans and only humans could use and make tools. David demonstrated it was wrong. And I'd been with the chimpanzees for about 2 years, and my mentor, Louis Leakey, took me on because I hadn't been to college. He wanted a mind uncluttered by scientific reductionist thinking. But after 2 years, he said, Jane, I want you to be recognized by other scientists, so you've got to get a degree. And I had to go to Cambridge to do straight into a PhD with no undergraduate degree. And I was told I'd done everything wrong. You shouldn't have given the chimpanzees names. They should have had numbers. You can't talk about their personalities, their minds, or their emotions, because those are unique to us. But I'd already been taught by a great teacher when I was a child that in that respect they were totally wrong. That was my dog, Rusty. You can't share your life in a meaningful way with any animal and not know that we're not the only sapient, sentient beings on the planet. And gradually, because chimps are so like us biologically as well as behaviorally, science has gradually changed. I never confronted those professors. But, as my careful notes came in and the film from the National Geographic, they send a photographer. So today, the people studying animal sentience and science has agreed animals, down to the octopus, are sentient beings capable of feeling fear, terror, pain. When I began work at Gombe in 1960 with the chimpanzees, Gombe was a tiny national park. It was part of a great forest belt that stretched across Africa. By the late 1980s, it was just a small island, a forest, and all around were bare hills, with more people living there than the land could support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere, struggling to survive. That's why the hills were bare. They were cutting down the trees just because they had to do something to live. And that's when it hit me. If we don't help these people find ways of living without destroying the environment, we can't save chimpanzees, forests, or anything else. So we began the Jane Goodall Institute's method of community-led conservation from the very beginning, not just handing out some crumbs because people were helping to save the environment, but talking to them. What do you want? Starting this very holistic program, Takari, about which a book is about to be published. And it's worked so well, and it includes scholarships to give girls a greater chance for secondary education, because it's been shown all around the world as women's education improves, family size tends to drop. And it works with Muhammad Yunus, who's one of my heroes, his microfinance, so that people can start their own small environmentally sustainable businesses. So people have risen out of poverty. In 104 villages throughout Chimp Range in Tanzania. The chimps are safe. Their areas increased because the villagers have put land aside as a buffer between chimps and the villagers, land aside with corridors to link the isolated Gombe chimps to other communities. And the same program is in 6 other African countries where we work. So, this is part of the importance I feel in alleviating poverty if we want to save the planet.
Well said.